Hi, everybody. Hi there. Welcome. My name is Libby, and I have Francis here with us. And today we're going to talk to the consciousness we call Mercredan, who is channeled by deep trance medium Francis Evans. Today we are going to be asking Mercredan about moving beyond the limitations of our five senses and the challenges and opportunities that being a physical body limited by our five senses may bring us. Please do like this video if you enjoy the content, and subscribe to keep updated. And if you have any questions, if you're watching this live, please feel free to put it in the comment box. If you're watching this on a replay, then please feel free to do so right in the comment box below. Any questions you might have for Mercredan and any topic suggestions for future videos, we definitely take these into account. So feel free to contribute as you see fit. So yeah, now we're going to cross over to Francis and see what Mercredan has to say for us. Thanks so much for joining us today, and over to you, Francis.
Once again, it is my privilege and pleasure to come and spend these few moments of your time. I've talked to the concept of the fields of influence. And I want to bring that into the notion of time, because there are timing fields of influence, shall we say, one's bodily clock, one's rhythm is the first field of influence on the realm of time. Then you have your daily clock, that is the time of day, the time of night, and then one's business clock, how one orientates oneself in the working day. And then, of course, there is the lunar clock measuring, shall we say, internal structures of time, and yearly clocks, the cosmic clocks that orientate in the seasons of time, the greater periods, the epochs of time. And so we enter the new epoch. Enough for us to begin the conversation.
Thank you, Mercredan. Thank you so much for being here with us again today. First of all, I would like to talk to you about the challenges and opportunities that living in a physical body has in terms of the limitations of our senses and perceptions, our five senses.
As one narrows down the levels of focus, one becomes more oriented into a structure and a limited field. So the physical world is a place, shall we say, to truly identify with the consequences of actions. Whether that is a benefit, of course, or whether it is a liability, depends on how one interprets the results of one's interactions. In other words, you enter into the experiential and experimental field that one can identify as a being. One then, shall we say, loses one's attention on the divine wholeness and specifies it in a limited form, in the identity that one knows as self. And such, then one has a certain orientation, a certain set of rules and behaviors that become structured around the senses. One, in other words, one sees what one can see within the limited field that the eyes can perceive of. Of course, it is well known there are much more possibilities, but in opening up that realm, one loses one's ability to function as, shall we say, as a community identity. In other words, one has to agree within the fields that one occupies. Does that make sense?
It does. Are you referring to perhaps
Excuse the body.
problem? This, like what we have coined, I guess, the sixth sense, the ability to see beyond our physical eyes. So how is it that we are limiting ourselves? Why cannot we bring that to, well, most people bring that into their perception. Why can't we see beyond, most of us see beyond our physical eyes?
Of course, one already sees beyond the physical eyes in the sense of imagination. And we have spoken to some degree about the world that is encapsulated within that realm. The imagination realm sees well beyond the physical eyes. And within the imaginary field, one can often hear as well. One sometimes can feel what it is like to occupy within that realm. You understand? The five physical senses can also be expanded into the realm of imagination. Do you understand? And yet, when the imagination begins to expand to include more and more materials, it is less and less able to function in a determined and set of rules. You understand what I mean? So there is a wider perception, yet a narrower ability to function. So the purpose of the physical dimension, in other words, the limited field of operation, is in order to carry out the experiments. That is, what am I exploring? What are the mechanisms I am applying? What are the results or consequences? And what does that mean? In other words, as you begin to add up your conclusions, you begin to form a conceptual world in which you live within. This is an obvious statement because you have many people, other people you interact with that live in entirely different creative fields. In other words, their interpretation of events and experiments is quite different to your own. And so then there are obvious challenges when there is a conflict of meaning. And it is within this realm, shall we say, that the new epoch is moving beyond. So then one begins to recognize, shall we say, then that conflicts occur not on the physical realm, but within the imaginal realm, prior to breaking out in force. Humankind has brought itself to the very edge of its own annihilation within the physical, determined, structured, and limited reality that is presently occupied. Do you understand what I mean? So at any moment, that world could be destroyed. And yet consciousness would continue on with those that perceive a wider set of parameters. Does this make some sort of sense?
Does. It's so we've talked a lot about imagination. Are you saying we're moving from the physical world to what we deem as more the imaginary world?
That is correct. I want to say this, that the imaginary world is no less physical to the imaginary individual. In other words, when you imagine yourself within a world, you are still structured in ways that interact with that world, with those ideas, and the responses are also have their own consequences within that world. Do you follow what I'm getting at? But it is less limited than the solid world defined by, shall we say, individual groups. In other words, shall we say, each nation has its own set of rules, its own consequential responses that are determined as a unit, that is, as a community. The imaginary world has greater freedoms. And you can understand this in terms of, shall we say, what I will call the general rebellion of individuals out of the limited notions that are trying to impede. Does that make sense? So you see all over the world, there is what I will call a rebellion in consciousness. That is, many no longer wish to be confined within the role base that is attempting to do that. You understand what is happening then is the new imagination is making connections in an inner dimension that applies in terms of the notion of freedoms.
Interesting.
So you can see this all around you with those that believe one thing that is limiting them and attempting to break free, others simply breaking free, others ignoring the rules and simply operating within their own set of parameters that allow a certain freedom while, shall we say, seemingly honoring the group set point. So, shall we say, all over the world, and this has been in preparation for a long time in human terms.
So what could we do as individuals? What is the, I don't know, what's some advice that you could give us to be able to manage these times?
I want to say manage the imagination. In other words, honor it as a creative force, that it is, as you can, shall we say, imagine the possible. Do you understand? That is not imagining the negativity that will drag you into a spiral, because every imagination is being created as you perceive it in the wholeness of the collective consciousness. You understand? I want to give an example of this. At your time in the last, shall we say, the last 50 or so years, the development of technology has escalated in periods so rapidly, and yet it was already in the blueprints of imagination. You understand the imaginary world was already predicting these possibilities, and as such, they become clearer and clearer as they manifest in an ordered sequence capable of being integrated into the evolutionary mm, mm, patterns within the consciousness. Do you understand? Once it is recognized that one creates realities in the inner framework, then, shall we say, the entirety of bringing this into a limited possibility becomes inconsequential. You understand? Let us put it this way. You have this increasing reliance on what you are calling artificial intelligence. But artificial intelligence is the accumulation and the access to human knowledge. It is the sharing of all realms of the imaginary structures. It is filled with all the ideas that have been presented in a human understanding. To follow what I'm getting at. So it is unable as yet to discern what is relevant, what is accurate, and it simply is the accumulation of all ideas, whether they are constructive or destructive. But that is not within the imaginary focus, because it is becoming clearer and clearer that artificial intelligence will have to learn how to identify what is useful and what is destructive. And not only that, but who is constructive and who is destructive. So that humankind begins to access, shall we call it, the greatest library of all time.
You once said to us, or you have said to us many times over the years, that essentially our thoughts are not our own. They are shared with everyone. You've called it the sea of consciousness before.
That is correct.
Are you talking about the imaginary world as the sea of consciousness, or are they two different things?
Shall we say the imaginary world takes from the sea of consciousness, reorganizes, reimagines, and adds to the sea of consciousness. Do you understand? So every new thought provides a new access point within the sea of consciousness. That is why development and ideas are forever bubbling up. Currents within the sea of consciousness create pathways in just the same way as it does in the oceans of the physical world.
Interesting. Thank you. Is there anything else that you would like to add today?
I want to say this. the greatest gift for self and for others. That is, for the divine itself is to take stock of your inner world, what you are creating, what you are imagining, and look to what is the greatest God for self as it affects others. In other words, something that is destructive for others cannot be constructive for self. You understand what I mean? So it is important to look at your creations in the imaginary world. Take stock and, shall we say, explore them, shall we say, in the world which is often called thought experiment. That is enough for today. Once again, thank you for your working in the consciousness realm. Thank you and bye.
Thank you, Mercredan, and thank you, Francis, for being with us today and sharing that wisdom. And thanks for everybody that's still with us and participating in today's discussion. If you have enjoyed today's content, please do like it and subscribe to keep updated. If you do have any questions or topic suggestions for the future, please feel free to put it in the comments box below. And if you are at all interested in asking Mercredan your own personal questions, Mercredan offers some incredible guidance to getting over personal blocks, finding your life path, dealing with any challenges for relationships, career, health, etc. in his or their 60-minute private online channeling session. So if you're interested in that, the link's below in the description. In the meantime, Delane will be back here on 3 days' time, same time, where she will be talking to Mercredan about divine will versus individual will, human will, or personal will, free will, as per se. So if you're interested, come back and join us then. Otherwise, bye for now. Thanks so much.